The morning air was still, almost too quiet for a Tuesday. The kind of silence that wraps around you and makes everything feel just a little off. The waiting room at the small family clinic was unusually calm. No phones ringing, just the occasional flip of a magazine page or the muffled hum of voices behind closed doors. And then they walked in, a middle-aged man and a teenage girl. She looked about 15, maybe 16, dressed in oversized clothes that swallowed her small frame. Her eyes darted nervously around the room like she didn't want to be seen. Her dad, well, that's what everyone assumed. He kept his hand firmly on her shoulder, guiding her toward the front desk like he didn't want her wandering off. He looked calm, composed, but a little too attentive. Too watchful. The receptionist gave a polite smile, but it faded quickly when she saw the girl. Something about her demeanor made people uneasy. She wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, flinched. Every time the door clicked open and stayed glued to the man's side like her life depended on it. The receptionist glanced down at the intake form and back up at the two of them. Routine checkup. She asked. The man nodded quickly. Yes. Just a follow-up. We're seeing Dr. Kayla. Okay, she's running a bit behind. Take a seat and we'll call you in when she's ready. They sat down in the far corner, the girl hunching into herself like she wanted to disappear. Every so often, her hands would tremble, and she'd glance sideways at the man, her supposed father, before quickly looking away. Something wasn't right. Even the nurse who passed by with a clipboard slowed down when she caught sight of them. It wasn't long before Dr. Kayla called them in. She'd been working at the clinic for years, known for being calm, sharp, and good with kids. She greeted them warmly, but her smile faded the moment she looked into the girl's eyes. It was subtle, but she noticed it's a fear, the hesitation, the kind of emotional bruising that didn't leave physical marks. Once inside the exam room, Dr. Kayla asked the man to wait outside for a few minutes. It was standard procedure sometimes, just to talk to teen patients one-on-one. The man's jaw tightened ever so slightly, but he gave a nod and stepped out. That's when things took a turn. The girl didn't speak at first. She just sat there, clutching the edge of the paper-covered exam table. Eyes on the floor, Dr. Kayla kept her voice soft, non-threatening, just trying to make her comfortable. But every question, "How are you feeling? Are you in any pain?" was met with a small nod or a shake of the head. Nothing else then. Very quietly, almost in a whisper, the girl finally spoke. Just 5 words. "Please don't tell my dad." Dr. Kayla felt her heart skip. "Why not, sweetheart?" she asked gently, keeping her tone neutral. The girl swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "Because he'll be mad. He said not to say anything. He said people would take me away." Dr. Kayla kept her face calm, but inside, her mind was racing. She asked if the girl had any physical pain, any symptoms. The girl nodded slowly. "My stomach hurts. A lot. Every morning, I feel sick sometimes." Concern turned to quiet alarm. Dr. Kayla decided to do a quick ultrasound just to be sure everything was okay. She offered a reassuring smile and said it would just take a few minutes as she turned on the machine and applied the cool gel to the girl's abdomen. She tried to keep the conversation light, but the girl didn't respond. She stared up at the ceiling, frozen. And then Dr. Kayla saw it. Her expression changed in an instant. Her hands stopped moving, eyes locked on the screen. Her breath hitched just a little, enough for the girl to notice. "What is it?" the girl asked, her voice suddenly tense. "Is something wrong?" Dr. Kayla didn't answer right away. Her mind was scrambling for explanations, her medical training going into overdrive. What she saw on that screen didn't match the story she'd been given. Not even close. It wasn't just a simple stomach issue. It was something far more serious, something that made her chest tighten. I just need to check something, Dr. Kayla said, trying to keep her voice steady. But the panic was creeping in now. The girl sat up slightly, panic rising in her own eyes. Now, am I sick? She asked. Is it something bad? Before Dr. Kayla could answer, there was a knock on the door. The man's voice came from the hallway. Is everything okay? In there. Dr. Kayla stood up quickly and opened the door just a crack. She met his eyes, and for the first time, she really looked at him. Calm on the outside, but behind those eyes, something was off. Very off. We're just finishing up, she said politely, but her tone had shifted. More formal. Less friendly. She closed the door again before he could say anything else. Turning back to the girl, Dr. Kayla placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'm going to get another doctor in here just for a second opinion, okay? You're safe. I promise. The girl blinked, not sure what was happening, but nodded. And as Dr. Kayla stepped out of the room, her mind was already jumping ahead. Whatever was going on night wasn't just medical. It was something else, something deeper. And she couldn't shake the image from the screen. Couldn't unsee what she saw. She walked quickly down the hall, heart pounding now, every instinct telling her to act fast. Because if her suspicions were even halfway right, this girl wasn't just scared. She was in danger, and time was running out. But what exactly did Dr. Kayla see on that ultrasound? And why did it cause her to panic, despite her years of experience and calm demeanor? The answer? Something no one in that clinic was ready for. And what the girl would reveal next would leave everyone stunned. To be continued. Dr. Kayla walked briskly down the hall, trying not to let her emotions show. She'd seen a lot over the years: complicated cases, panicked parents, even the occasional emergency, but something about this felt different. It wasn't just a medical issue. There was fear in that girl's voice, not normal teenage nerves, real fear. The kind that sticks. She tapped on Dr. Hassan's office door. He was the clinic's senior physician, and someone Kayla trusted when her gut told her something wasn't right. He looked up from his desk, concern spreading across his face the moment he saw her. Can you step into exam 3? She said quietly. I need a second opinion. He didn't ask questions, just stood, grabbed his tablet, and followed back. In the exam room, the girl sat where Kayla had left her. Legs dangling slightly off the edge of the exam table, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes widened when she saw a second doctor enter. Are you mad at me? She whispered, almost like a child afraid of punishment. No, sweetheart, no one's mad. Dr. Kayla said softly as she walked back in. We just want to make sure. We understand everything, that's all. Dr. Hassan greeted her gently and began reviewing the ultrasound results on the monitor. He didn't say much, just leaned in a little, eyes narrowing. The room went silent except for the hum of the machine. And then he took a slow breath. He looked at Dr. Kayla and gave the smallest shake of his head. It wasn't disbelief, was confirmation. The girl didn't understand what was going on, but she could feel the mood shift. Her body tensed again. Am I sick? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Hassan turned to her and smiled, kindly, though there was a weight behind his eyes. Not sick. But we do need to ask you a few more questions, just so we can help you feel better. Is that okay? She looked between them and nodded slowly. Do you remember the last time you had your period? Dr. Kayla asked, keeping her tone as soft and casual as possible. The girl bit her lip. I don't know. Maybe a few months ago, I think. Okay. That's helpful, Dr. Kayla said, gently jotting something down. And do you know if you've ever been to a hospital before? For anything like this? The girl shook her head quickly. No. He said we didn't need doctors. He said it would just go away. Who said that? The girl paused. She looked at the closed door. Her lips parted, then shut again. My dad. That single word hung in the air like a heavy weight. Doctor. Hassan and Dr. Kayla exchanged a glance. Neither of them spoke, but they didn't need to. Something about this girl's condition didn't line up with a simple oversight. The ultrasound had revealed something far too specific, and there was no sign that anyone had sought treatment or advice before this visit. What's going to happen now? The girl asked suddenly. Her voice shook. Is he coming? Back in, Dr. Kayla crouched down so they were eye level. Right now, our job is to take care of you. That's all. You're safe here. We'll talk more soon, okay? There was a knock on the door again, firmer this time. Everything okay? The man's voice asked again, a little sharper than before. Dr. Kayla stood and opened it a few inches. The man's face was neutral, but his eyes were scanning everything, like he was trying to read her expression. We're just finishing the scan, she said calmly. We'll be out shortly. He nodded, slowly. She's not used to being alone, he said. Gets nervous. I understand, she replied. We'll be right with you. She shut the door again and locked it. It wasn't standard protocol. But right now, something told her it was necessary. Do you trust him? She asked the girl gently. The girl froze. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she slowly shook her head. I don't know, she said. He used to be nice. Before Mom went away. Dr. Hassan turned toward her. Where's your mom now? The girl blinked. She left. A long time ago. He said she didn't want us anymore. There it was, again, that gap. That missing context. That kept poking holes in the story they'd been given. There were too many unanswered questions, too much tension. And now, real fear in the girl's body language. They didn't press further. Not yet. Instead, Dr. Kayla stepped out into the hallway, pulling Dr. Hassan with her. She's pregnant, she whispered. I know, he replied. And she doesn't seem to know how or who. She's terrified of him, Kayla said. We? Let her walk out that door with him. We won't, he said firmly. But we'll need to contact someone. Child Services. Possibly the police. She nodded. I'll get on the phone. Back in the room, the girl sat quietly, staring. At the door, her fingers twisted the bottom of her hoodie, knuckles white. Every second felt like it stretched too long. The silence in the room pressing down on her chest, outside. The man was still in the waiting room, eyes locked on the hallway. Watching every movement, every nurse who walked by, every door that opened and closed. Something was building. A storm, slow and quiet. But gathering, Dr. Kayla stepped into a side office and made the first call to a social worker she knew personally. She explained the situation in vague but urgent terms. Then she called the police. She didn't make accusations, just shared concern for a patient's safety, and that they may need support quickly. Within minutes, an officer was dispatched. But the challenge wasn't over. The man was still waiting. And now he was getting impatient. He stood up, paced a little, then walked toward the exam hallway. The receptionist noticed and stood halfway out of her chair. Sir, can I help you? She asked carefully. They've been in there a long time, he said. I just want to check on her. Before she could reply, the door to exam 3 opened. Dr. Hassan stepped out. We're almost done, he said calmly. Please take a seat and we'll bring her out shortly. The man stared at him, silent. Then, slowly, returned to the waiting room. But his calm mask was slipping. Back inside, the girl had curled into herself. She was scared, confused, and her mind was racing, stuck between trust and silence, safety and fear. She didn't understand everything happening, but she understood something was different. These people were asking questions no one ever had, and they weren't looking away. Dr. Kayla returned a few minutes later and gave the girl a quiet smile. "You're very brave," she said. The girl didn't respond. She just stared at her shoes. Outside the clinic's entrance bell rang. A uniformed officer stepped in, and that's when everything started to change. The police officer who walked into the clinic was calm but alert, scanning the front desk, then the waiting area. The receptionist stood slowly and gave him a quick nod, her eyes flicking toward the man still sitting in the corner. He didn't look up right away, but the tension in his shoulders gave him away. He noticed Dr. Kayla stepped out to meet the officer, keeping her voice low. "She's in exam 3, minor, female, visibly distressed. We've confirmed she's pregnant. She hasn't said much, but what she has said, it's enough to raise concern." The officer nodded. "Where's the man?" Kayla tilted her head toward the waiting area. "Claims to be her father. Name matches the intake form, but we haven't verified anything." The officer didn't approach him yet. Instead, he walked with Dr. Kayla toward the back of the clinic. The hallway seemed quieter now, heavier somehow. The closer they got to exam 3, the more Kayla felt her chest tighten. She had to keep her expression neutral, professional, but her hands were cold. Inside the room, the girl sat exactly where she'd been. She looked up when the officer walked in, her eyes widening slightly. For a second, it seemed like she might speak, but instead, she just stared at him, studying. Measuring, he gave a gentle smile and crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. "Hey there," he said calmly. "My name's Officer Decker. Just here to check on you. That's all. You're not in trouble." She blinked but said nothing. Dr. Kayla stayed by the door, watching closely. Every movement the girl made was cautious, like she was still waiting for something to go wrong. "Can I ask your name?" Officer Decker asked softly. "Lila," she whispered. "That's a pretty name. Lila, can I ask, do you feel safe with the man who brought you here?" Lila hesitated. Her lips moved like she was about to speak, but no words came out. Dr. Kayla stepped in gently. "You can tell him the truth, Lila. You're safe in this room. No one can hurt you here." Lila looked at both of them for a long moment. Then finally, she shook her head, not quickly, not dramatically. Just a small, defeated shake. Officer Decker nodded slowly. "Thank you for being honest. That helps a lot." He stood and stepped outside, where Dr. Hassan was already waiting. The officer kept his voice low. "She's scared of him. We don't know exactly why yet, but it's clear. I'm going to make a call, have someone from Youth Protection meet us here. I'd like her to stay in the room until we can get her somewhere safe." Dr. Hassan nodded, concern written all over his face. What if he gets suspicious? We don't give him a reason to. But out in the waiting room, things were already starting to shift. The man was no longer seated. He was pacing now, glancing toward the hallway every few seconds. His jaw was tight, and he kept checking his watch. When the officer finally walked back into view, the man stepped forward. "Is she okay? You've all been in there a long time." The officer offered a calm smile. "We're just running a few more checks. Clinic protocol. Appreciate your patience." The man's eyes narrowed. "She doesn't like strangers. She gets anxious. I should be with her. We've got a great pediatric team. She's in good hands." Something in the man's face shifted, subtle but sharp. A flicker of irritation, quickly covered by a forced smile. "Look, I don't want to make trouble, but if we're done, I'd like to get her home." Dr. Kayla stepped in again. "She be out shortly. I just need to finish her paperwork." The man looked at her for a beat too long, then nodded, but the mask was cracking. Back in the exam room, Lila spoke again, almost to herself. "He said they'd take me away, that no one would." "Believe me?" Dr. Kayla crouched beside her. "Who said that?" She looked down. "My dad, or he said he was. But I don't remember him before we moved." Don't remember a lot, actually. What do you mean? We used to live somewhere else. I don't know where. Then one day, he said Mom was gone, and we moved to the middle of nowhere. I stopped. Going to school. Dr. Kayla exchanged a glance with Dr. Hassan, who had quietly re-entered the room. The puzzle pieces were starting to form a very troubling picture. Outside the clinic, another car pulled into the lot. A plain sedan, unmarked, but clearly official. Two women stepped out, one carrying a clipboard, the other a small satchel. Social workers. Direct and used to navigating high-stress cases like this. The receptionist buzzed the back hallway, and within seconds, the officer had briefed them. They moved quickly but quietly, making their way toward Leela's room, while Officer Decker went to distract the man. I just spoke with the medical staff, the officer said, casually intercepting him near the desk. They've asked that we run a quick ID check, part of new patient verification. Do you have a copy of your license? The man blinked. Seriously? Just a quick formality. Shouldn't take more than a minute. The man hesitated. It's in the car. No problem. I'll walk with you. They exited through the front doors, but not before the man gave one last glance over his shoulder toward the hall. Inside, the social workers were now speaking softly with Lila. She was withdrawn. But she answered their questions slowly, cautiously. Every time she mentioned Dad, she looked at the door, as if afraid he might be listening. One of the workers, a woman named Amanda, gently asked, "Has he ever hurt you, Lila?" Lila was silent. Then she nodded. "Did he hurt your mom?" "Think so. I heard her once, crying. Then she was just gone." Amanda's face stayed calm, but her hand paused on her notes. "Okay, you're very brave, Lila. You did the right thing by talking to us." Lila's eyes welled up. "Is he going to be mad?" "You don't have to worry about him anymore," Amanda said gently. "You're not alone now." Outside, things were escalating. The man had refused to retrieve his ID, claiming he didn't want to leave Lila unattended. When the officer pressed again, he grew defensive, too defensive. That's when backup arrived. Two uniformed officers stepped into the clinic lobby, quiet but commanding. It was no longer a casual conversation. The man's tone shifted fast. "I don't understand what this is. She's my daughter. We're just here for a checkup." "That's what we're trying to confirm," Officer Decker replied. "Until then, we're asking you to stay outside. You have no right. We have every right to ensure her safety." The man's expression twisted, not fear, not concerned, but something colder. Then, without warning, he turned and bolted for the exit. One of the officers chased him out into the parking lot. It didn't take long. He didn't get far. Within minutes, he was in cuffs. Back inside, the clinic was quiet, again, but not calm. Not yet. Lila sat on the edge of the exam table, surrounded by kind strangers and unfamiliar voices. But for the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't waiting for someone to yell, or grab her arm, or lie to her. She was still scared, still unsure of what came next. But something inside her had started to shift. The tightness in her chest had eased just slightly. Because maybe, just maybe, someone finally believed her, and somewhere in the growing silence of that small clinic, the truth was beginning to surface. But there were still more questions, and not all of them had answers yet. The clinic had fallen into a tense quiet. Not the usual hush of medical professionalism, but something heavier, like the air itself, was waiting. Lila sat alone now with Amanda, the social worker who hadn't taken her eyes off the girl since they met. Though calm on the outside, Amanda's mind was racing. Every answer Lila gave opened up another question. The timeline didn't make sense. The stories she'd been told about her mother, about their sudden move, even about who this man really was, were full of gaps and contradictions. Outside the exam room, Dr. Kayla hovered near the nurse's station, pretending to review paperwork. But really, just watching the hallway, she couldn't shake the image of that ultrasound screen. The reading had been unmistakable. Lila wasn't just pregnant, she was far along. At least 5 months, and the girl hadn't even understood what was happening to her. Officer Decker stepped back inside, speaking low into his radio. Suspect is in custody. Transporting him now. No resistance after the initial run. Dr. Hassan joined him, his brow furrowed. He's still claiming to be the father. Won't say much. Just keeps asking about her. Says he has a right to know what's happening. Well, he's not going to know much more today. Dr. Hassan muttered, but even as the man was taken away, the questions stayed behind. If he wasn't Lila's real father, then who was he? How had he gotten custody if there ever was legal custody at all? Why had no one noticed she'd disappeared from school, from the system entirely? Amanda sat across from Lila, notebook resting on her lap, but she hadn't written anything in a while. She wanted to ask more. Needed to, actually. But Lila's fragile state made it hard to know what was safe to say. One wrong word, and the girl could shut down completely. Do you remember anyone before him? Amanda asked gently. Like neighbors, friends, any other adults? Lila squinted like she was trying to see through a fog in her own mind. There was a lady with red hair. I think she lived next door, before we moved. She used to give me cookies. Do you remember her name? Lila shook her head. No. But she smelled like flowers. I remember that. It wasn't much, but it was something. A trace. And right now, anything was better than the darkness surrounding this case. Back at the front desk, Dr. Kayla pulled Lila's intake form and examined it again. The address listed was from a remote rural area, almost a 2-hour drive from the clinic. No emergency contacts, no insurance info, no school listed. Just a name, an address, and a girl who looked like she hadn't been outside in months. Dr. Hassan leaned over. You thinking what I'm thinking? That she's been off the grid. Yeah, and not by choice. I want to run her name through the missing persons database, he said. Dr. Kayla paused. You think she's been reported? I think someone probably tried. If not her mother, maybe that neighbor. Or a school teacher who noticed when she stopped showing up. Do it, she said. Already feeling her stomach twist, Amanda stepped out of the exam room a few minutes later and quietly waved over the officer. I think she's remembering more, she whispered. But it's buried under years of confusion. She doesn't even seem sure how long it's been since her mom disappeared. Did she mention anything else? Amanda hesitated. One thing. She said sometimes she heard him on the phone, talking about places, dropping off boxes, driving long distances. She said he once told someone, this one's quiet. No trouble at all. Officer Decker's expression darkened. That doesn't sound like something you say about your daughter. No, it sounds like something you say about someone you're hiding. Suddenly, one of the nurses called from the back office. You might want to see this, she said, holding up her screen. Dr. Kayla and Officer Decker walked over. On the monitor was a missing child's report dated 2 years ago. Lila's photo was older, taken from a school yearbook, but it was her. Same eyes. Same soft features. Name? Lila R. Weston. Age at disappearance, 13. Last seen? Outskirts of Pine Ridge. Reported by Janine Weston. Mother Dr. Kayla's breath caught. She's been missing for 2 years. The officer scanned the details. And? The man who brought her in his name doesn't appear anywhere in this file. They printed the report and added it to the growing file. It was quickly becoming clear this wasn't just a case of neglect or even unauthorized custody. This was something far more serious, possibly even trafficking. But the deeper they looked, the stranger things got. The man's record came back, mostly clean to few traffic violations. No signs of past offenses, no aliases, nothing to suggest he'd done this before. And yet, the way he had kept her hidden, the things she'd heard him say, the false information on the clinic, forms it all pointed to something organized. Then came the call. The front desk picked up the phone, expecting another routine inquiry, but the voice on the other end wasn't asking about appointments. She was seen. "At your clinic," the voice said. "Call male. You need to keep your staff quiet. You understand?" The receptionist froze. Then slowly hung up the phone. She turned to Dr. Kayla, pale. Someone just called. They knew Lila was here. They didn't give a name. Dr. Hassan heard this from down the hall and immediately locked the back entrance. "Someone's watching," he said. Officer Decker got on his radio again. "We may need additional patrol cars. Someone knows the girl is here. We need to secure the perimeter." Dr. Kayla walked swiftly back into the exam room where Lila was now sitting alone again. Amanda had stepped out only moments earlier. Lila looked up, confused. "What's happening?" she asked. "Why are people running around?" Dr. Kayla knelt down in front of her. "You're not in trouble, but we think someone dangerous might be looking for you. Someone besides the man who brought you." Lila's lips trembled. "But why?" "We're going to figure that out, I promise. But right now, I need you to stay in this room. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Amanda, okay?" Lila nodded, her eyes filling with panic. She was trying hard to hold back. Outside, too, more patrol cars pulled into the parking lot. Officers stepped out, scanning the lot, checking every car. There were no immediate signs of anyone lingering, but the fact that the call had come at all meant someone was watching. Someone who wanted to make sure Lila stayed quiet. And as the clinic doors locked and the officers took their positions, a sense of urgency settled over everyone inside. Because whatever this man had been involved in wasn't over yet. And Lila wasn't just a victim. She might be the only one who could blow the entire thing wide open. The clinic was now under a quiet lockdown. No one said the word out loud, but the energy had changed. The lights still hummed, the paperwork still sat on desks, and the air conditioning blew through the vents like it always did, but underneath. It all was tension, real, sharp, and growing by the second. 2 uniformed officers were stationed at the front and back entrances, their eyes constantly scanning. Dr. Kayla moved from room to room, checking on staff, trying to keep the place running, like nothing was wrong. But inside, her thoughts were with Lila, still tucked away in exam room 3. Scared and alone, not knowing who she could trust beyond the handful of people she'd met today. Amanda had returned to sit beside her, this time with a small bag of snacks from the vending machine. "You hungry?" she asked gently. Lila shrugged, then took the crackers without a word. Across the hallway, Officer Decker and Dr. Hassan reviewed everything again: the missing child report, the clinic intake forms, the notes from Lila's examination. Everything was beginning to paint a clearer picture. But it was still missing something. A connection. A motive. If this man had taken her 2 years ago and kept her hidden, there had to be more to it than just one child. Then, just as the officer picked up his radio to request an update, another call came through. Not on the clinic phone, but Dr. Kayla's personal cell. She frowned at the unknown number and hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. She answered, keeping her voice firm. Dr. Kayla speaking. The voice on the other end was calm, confident, almost like it belonged to someone who wasn't worried at all. "You should let her go. You don't know who you're dealing with." Dr. Kayla stood upright. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows how fragile things can get. That girl doesn't belong to you. You think you've rescued her? You haven't. You've just interrupted something bigger than you understand. Then the call ended. No name, no number traceable. Just silence. She stood frozen for a second and walked straight to Officer Decker, her face pale. I just got a second threat. They know I'm personally involved now. He grabbed a notepad. What exactly did they say? That we should let her go, that we don't understand who we're dealing with. He looked at her. Then we've hit something serious. But they still didn't know what. Dr. Hassan, silent for most of the exchange, suddenly spoke. You said he brought her in from a rural address, right? That's the only trace we have of where she's been. Kayla nodded. Why? What if that place isn't just where he kept her, but where others were? The room went still. You're thinking trafficking, Decker said quietly. Maybe not just that, Hassan said. She heard him talking about deliveries. She mentioned boxes, long drives. What if she wasn't the only one? Before anyone could respond, another officer called from the front desk. We've got something. It's one of the patrol units near. The suspect's residents spotted movement around the property. Thought it was empty. Dr. Kayla's heart sank. Are they sending someone in? They're waiting on a warrant, the officer replied. But there's activity. Amanda came out from Leela's room just in time to hear the update. If that property is active, we have no idea who else is there. What if someone's cleaning it out as we speak? Decker got on the radio again. Tell the unit to hold visual. No one goes in until we have a tactical team. But even that didn't calm anyone. Because now the question wasn't just about Lila. It was about who else might be missing and whether they still had time. Inside exam room 3, Lila looked up from her crackers. Why is everyone whispering? Amanda offered a gentle smile. They're just making sure you stay safe. That's all. Lila was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, there were others. Amanda's hand stilled on her lap. What do you mean, sweetheart? I don't know their names. But sometimes, when we stopped for gas or stayed somewhere for a night, there'd be other girls. Some younger than me. One of them tried to talk to me once, but he got mad, said I couldn't make friends. Amanda leaned in. Do you remember where that was? No. Just smelled like pine trees, and the room had dark red curtains. I remember that. And a weird lamp with a bird on it. Amanda stood quickly and stepped into the hallway, calling for Decker. She just confirmed she's seen others, possibly more victims. He may have moved them through short-stay motels. Decker's expression hardened. We'll need to start mapping routes based on gas stations and motels around that area. But then another twist. Dr. Kayla's computer screen lit up with a flagged email notification. It had been sent to the clinic's general inbox from an encrypted address. No subject, just a single sentence. You have 1 hour to release her, or we'll come get her ourselves. No signature. No sender. Dr. Kayla showed it to Decker, who immediately called for more units. This is no longer just a medical case. We've stepped into a criminal operation. The email changed everything. Now it wasn't just about hiding Lila. It was about preparing for an assault, a calculated attempt to retrieve her, no matter who was in the way. Which meant whoever was behind this wasn't just angry, they were organized. Lila sat in the exam room, unaware of the growing danger closing in. She looked up when Amanda returned, sensing something wasn't right. Is he coming back? She asked. Amanda hesitated. No, he's not coming back, but someone else might. Lila clutched the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Will they hurt you? 2. Amanda knelt beside her. No, because we're not letting anyone near you. Not ever again. But even as she said the words, a new fear was forming. Because if someone was willing to come to the clinic, what else were they willing to? Do the officers at the doors tighten their positions? Radios buzzed. Every clinic employee had now been told not to leave, not until backup arrived. This was supposed to be a normal day, A quiet Tuesday. But now, it was something else, and in the center of it all, a girl who'd been missing for 2 years was finally at the heart of a storm she never asked for. But what they didn't know yet was that the biggest secret Leila carried hadn't even come out. The air inside the clinic had gone still, like it was holding its breath. Every window was locked, every entrance watched, and the officers stood ready. Even the quiet hum of the machines seemed to fade under the weight of what everyone now knew. They were no longer just protecting a patient, they were guarding a target. Leila, the girl who had walked in for a routine checkup, had just become the center of a criminal investigation, and time was running out. Officer Decker stood near the front door, hand resting on his radio, waiting for confirmation from the tactical team approaching the suspect's rural property. Inside, Amanda stayed with Leila, trying to distract her with small talk, but her eyes kept flicking to the clock on the wall. Less than 20 minutes had passed since the threat was sent. Every second ticked louder now, and then it happened. The front glass door creaked as it opened halfway, just enough to trigger a shift in every officer's stance. A man stepped through, not the same one who'd brought Leila in earlier, but someone different. Taller, cold expression, no hesitation. He scanned the lobby slowly, eyes falling on Officer Decker. "I'm here for my niece," he said flatly. Decker stepped forward. "And your name?" "Greg Weston. Her mother's brother. I saw the alerts. I came to take her home." Hector. Kayla, standing a few feet behind, blinked. Weston, the same last name on the missing persons file. Could it be? Could he really be a relative? Amanda was summoned immediately and brought Leila out into the hallway, but not close enough to see him. Just enough for Decker to ask, "Leila, do you know this man?" She peeked past the corner. Her eyes narrowed, confused. Then shook her head. "I don't know him." Greg didn't flinch. "She was very young the last time we saw each other. Probably doesn't remember. I have custody papers." He reached into his coat slowly, but Decker raised his hand. "Stop. Right there. Slowly. Let me take that." Greg handed over a manila folder. Inside were court-stamped documents, guardianship paperwork filed just weeks after Leila disappeared. All signed. All sealed. Kayla glanced over them with Amanda. "But this doesn't make sense," she said. "If he had custody, why didn't he ever report her missing again?" Amanda frowned. "Maybe he didn't know where she was." Greg nodded. "I was stationed overseas when my sister vanished. Took me almost a year to track anything down. By the time I got the guardianship ruling, she was already gone." The room was silent for a moment, heavy with doubt and tension. Officer Decker wasn't satisfied. If that's true, why did someone just threaten this clinic claiming to get her back? If you're the rightful guardian, why threaten it? Rescue? Greg didn't answer right away. Then he looked down, because they knew she was never supposed to be found. Dr. Kayla stepped closer. "Who are they?" Greg's eyes met hers. "There's a group, small, hidden. They find children who've slipped through the cracks. Sometimes they take them. Sometimes they're paid to hide them. My sister tried to leave them. She got scared. That's when she disappeared. I don't think she's dead. I think they still have her, and Leila was the last piece they needed to keep her quiet." Leila's hand clutched Amanda's sleeve tightly. "My mom's alive." "I don't know," Greg said. "But if she is, you're the only one who can bring her back." The room fell into stunned silence. Outside, another radio call came through. Officer Decker stepped aside to answer. His face changed almost instantly. "They breached the property," he said. "The tactical team found 3 more girls, locked in the basement, all alive." Gasps rippled through the staff. Amanda covered her mouth. Leila's eyes widened. 3 others, just like her. Dr. Hassan turned to Greg. Is this the group your sister was afraid of? Greg nodded. They posed as social workers, relocation counselors. They offer to help struggling parents, especially single moms. Then they disappear, and the kids vanish with them. Amanda looked at Lila, and you were never supposed to be found. Lila's voice was quiet. He told me if I talked, they'd find me, that no one would believe me. Greg crouched down. But we do. And I'm not letting them hurt you. Again? As the officers moved to secure the clinic even tighter, Decker's radio crackled once more. We just got an ID match, the voice said. The man who brought Lila in, his real name is Frank Dalton. He's not her father. He's connected to 2 other missing child cases in different states. He's been on the run for almost 4 years. Hala didn't cry. She just stood still, frozen in the knowledge that everything she feared had been true, that her world had never been safe. Dr. Kayla walked over and gently touched her shoulder. You're free now, and you're not alone. Everyone thought the story was over. The man who took her was in custody. The other children were found. The group was exposed. But then, just as Greg turned to sign the transfer papers for temporary guardianship, something unexpected happened. Lila pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. This was in his car, she said quietly. I took it the last time he left me alone. Amanda unfolded it carefully. The paper was smudged and stained, but clear enough to read. It was a list of names, not just children, but adults, women, locations, numbers at the top. In black ink, one name stood out. Janine Weston. Status held. Transfer pending, doctor. Kayla stared at it, then looked at Greg. She's alive. The clinic erupted into motion. Decker called dispatch. Amanda rushed to scan the paper for clues. And Lila, silent and small in the center of the chaos, stood a little taller because, for the first time in 2 years, the girl who was never supposed to speak had just blown everything open, and her story wasn't over yet. The room buzzed with urgency as Officer Decker handed the folded paper to a nearby agent for immediate processing. The names, the numbers, and the mention of transfer pending lit up a new path in the investigation, one they hadn't dared hope for. It wasn't just a victory for Lila, it was a crack in the entire operation that had kept children like her hidden for years. And right at the top was Janine Weston, her mother. Lila sat beside Amanda, hands trembling but eyes steady. She watched the adults move around her, papers being passed, calls being made, decisions flying across the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't invisible. She was the reason people were fighting. She was being believed. Greg stood close by, staring at his sister's name on the paper like he was afraid to blink. He'd searched for so long through false leads and bureaucratic roadblocks, always hitting dead ends. But now there was a lead solid and undeniable. He crouched down beside Lila and gave her a soft smile. You did something incredible today, he said. Because of you, we might find your mom. Lila nodded slowly. I just didn't want anyone else to go through what I did. Outside, sirens echoed in the distance. More law enforcement units were arriving, and, for once, the clinic's small parking lot looked like a command center. The rural property where Frank Dalton had kept the other girls was now a full crime scene, and search warrants were already being filed for related locations mentioned on the list. The FBI had joined the case within the hour. Dr. Kayla stood quietly by the window, watching everything unfold. She felt an ache in her chest, part grief, part relief. In all her years of practicing medicine, she'd never experienced anything like this. She had seen abuse, neglect, trauma, but this was organized, deliberate evil, disguised behind fake names and stolen identities. And it was only uncovered because a terrified little girl had dared to speak. Officer Decker returned with updates. They've confirmed Janine Weston is alive. She's being held in an isolated safe house used as a holding site before transfers. We're moving in now. ETA is under an hour. Greg exhaled hard, his hands covering his face for a moment. Then, he looked at Leela again. They're bringing her home. Leela didn't cry. Not yet. She just stared straight ahead, trying to process the words. Home. After all this time, home wasn't just a memory anymore. Was a possibility. A real one. Amanda gave her hand a gentle squeeze. You're going to see her again, sweetheart. She's going to be so proud of you. But even in that moment of hope, the weight of what had been revealed still lingered. Frank Dalton had been moving between states, using different names, different fake documents he'd been involved with. Others who shared resources, fake identities, even properties. And according to a secondary list in the backseat of his truck, Lila wasn't the last child he had plans for. It took less than 2 hours for law enforcement to reach the safe house listed under Janine's name. They found her inside, locked, in a room with blackout curtains and cameras hidden behind air vents. She was malnourished, bruised, but alive. When they asked for her name, she said, Janine Weston. Please tell me you have my daughter. Back at the clinic, Amanda and Dr. Kayla prepared Lila for the next step. A trauma counselor had been arranged. Legal teams had been notified. Child Protective Services were working closely with Greg and law enforcement to ensure Lila's transition was handled with care and compassion. But Lila only had one question. Can I go see her? Within hours, she was being escorted by 2 officers and Amanda to a secure location where her mother had been taken for medical evaluation. The reunion was quiet at first. Just the 2 of them in a small room, staring at each other in disbelief. Then, as if the past 2 years had never happened, Janine fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around her daughter. They stayed like that for a long time. Amanda stood by the doorway, tears in her eyes. No one said a word. There was nothing to explain. Just the raw truth of a mother and child, finally back in each other's arms. Against all odds, Greg arrived shortly after. He waited until they had a moment alone, then stepped in, tears in his eyes too. He hadn't just saved his niece, he'd found his sister. The family that had been shattered was beginning to mend. In the days that followed, the case exploded. Across national news, the clinic's name was kept private for security reasons. But the story of the missing girl found at a routine checkup had spread like wildfire. More victims came forward. Some families finally got closure. Others learned the truth about children they thought had simply run away. Frank Dalton and 4 others were arrested. It's all connected to the same network of child smugglers operating under the guise of family services. Their operation had gone unchecked for years until one brave little girl walked into a small-town clinic with a story no one could ignore. As for Lila, recovery was slow. There were nightmares, therapy sessions, and hard days when trust felt too fragile to hold. But she was surrounded by people who didn't give up on her. Amanda visited often. Greg moved closer. And Janine, though still healing from her own trauma, never left her side again. Dr. Kayla returned to her routine eventually, but she was never the same. She volunteered in outreach programs, trained other doctors to spot subtle signs of trafficking, and worked closely with law enforcement to improve how the medical system responds in moments like this. The clinic added one new photo to their break room. While it wasn't fancy, just a picture of Lila smiling with Amanda and Dr. Kayla outside under a tree. On the back, someone had written, "One voice can change everything." And it had, because of one girl who refused to stay silent. A whole operation had crumbled. Families had been reunited, lives had been saved. And even though the scars remained, they were no longer hidden. They were carried with strength, with purpose. The story wasn't about a villain. It wasn't even about the crime. It was about courage, about speaking up when no one else would, about the quiet power of being believed, and about how even on the darkest day, a child's voice, scared, quiet, unsure, can light the way home.